Welcome back to Score on Business. Remember to check out scorenashville.org. And our next guest is Cindy Beresh-Bryant. Thank you for being here, Cindy.
Thank you. I appreciate it, Pete.
Yeah. And Cindy is the president of HR by Design. I'm so sorry, HR Solutions by Design. Tell us briefly, what do you do?
I'll be happy to. HR Solutions by Design focuses on helping our clients be able to leverage their human capital, their employees, their people, for a competitive advantage in the marketplace. So we do all the traditional HR stuff in terms of helping with compliance solutions and learning and development and business solutions, but our specialty is really in helping that organization understand what their culture is and how they can leverage that for a competitive advantage.
That is the competitive advantage in many ways.
Yes, it is.
And without it, it can, happy folks who feel engaged, good thing. Unhappy folks who are not engaged, bad thing.
Absolutely.
Okay, so what is culture? And share an example of, if you can, share an example of a company that has competitive advantage because of culture, and one, well, the other way.
Okay. Well, culture in its simplest form are those shared values, beliefs, and traditions that a company has. In other words, it's how do things get done in that organization. And so if we look at the big folks from a culture perspective, it would be folks like Southwest Airlines. They have a decided competitive advantage because of their culture. Zappos, the internet company, as well as Netflix. And so their culture is so important to them that they actually hire for it, they reward for it, and they even, unfortunately, terminate for it as well. On the flip side of that, recently in the news, it's been all over the culture of the NFL and how the NFL has gotten to where they are. And the reason that's such an important aspect is because their culture has a direct impact on their brand, and that's where it absolutely goes to the profitability of the organization. So let me just give you an example. We started working with a company about 3 or 4 years ago. They were just coming out of bankruptcy, and they obviously were looking for a new way of doing things. They'd been in business for over 100 years, but what they were doing was no longer effective. And so we went in and started working with them to identify what their culture was, identify what culture they wanted, and then start putting together a strategy of how do we get there and how do we engage those employees to drive a level of participation and performance that's really going to enhance the organization. And through those efforts, here we are almost 4 years later, they are not only profitable, they have their corporate headquarters has decided to not only keep them but combine them or merge them with another operation and move those operations here to Middle Tennessee. So they've had quite the turnaround in about 4 years.
Wow, and congratulations to you for being a part of that.
Well, I'm thrilled to be a part of it because I am absolutely passionate about culture as being that competitive advantage.
You were talking about Zappos, and I read at some point in the recent past that when people are interviewing there, if they're thinking about hiring, they offer them several $1,000s to go away.
They do. That's exactly right. And as I said, if you're going to have an organizational culture, an OC, it's based on your values, your philosophies, and most importantly, your actions. And so that's where Zappos really backs it up. Tony Shea and his management team have decided what their core values are. And so when they're recruiting and hiring, they are hiring to those core values. So as you mentioned, if they have someone that they make an offer to, in the first 2 weeks they come on board and they will offer them, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, the offer's up to about $4,000 for them to just take the money and run, to just go away because their culture is that important to them. So they would rather somebody take $4,000 and leave than keep them and have them destroy the culture.
So how can companies go about getting the culture that they would like?
Well, first of all, what we do is we work with them to identify what their culture is today.
Yeah.
And what I mean by that is not only what they put on the wall, because every company, most companies,
Right.
will have values that they've posted nicely on the wall. Enron,
Yeah.
for example, had values that were etched in marble in their lobby. And of course, Enron is no longer in
Right.
business today. So what we do is we help our clients identify what are their values, and then we help them articulate how do we expect those values to be lived in their organization and demonstrated day in and day out. Then we look at, well, what are your actions? Do your actions really live your values, or do they live something else?
Right.
Because that's where the rubber really hits the road. And so many times what we find when we do that initial assessment is that what the company said was important and how they're acting is very different. So once
Right.
we do that and we've identified what they would like their culture to be, then we build their entire HR infrastructure around the actions that are going to support the
Right.
values.
Yeah, I think one thing that really struck me out of what you said is to help them see what the reality is. And we have all seen companies and worked at companies where there were great things on the wall, but the behavior did not show that. So why are there so many companies with an unhealthy culture?
Culture is hard. An organization's OC, or organizational culture, is very difficult, and it takes intentional behaviors day in and day out. And so it's much easier to develop a product, to install software, to do something that you do once, and then you just continue to reap the rewards or
Right.
the residual benefits from that. With every decision, with every strategy, with every implementation, an organization's OC, their culture, organizational culture, is either reinforced or it's eroded, and so that becomes very hard. And then
Right.
as you hire new people, you can certainly get somebody who's brand new that doesn't share those corporate values and philosophies, and they can go a totally different direction, and it doesn't take long to erode it.
Yeah. Cindy, thank you so much for being here today. And hey, check out scorenashville.org. We'll be right back.
Thank you.